Attention, esteemed members of the Galactic Council. This is High Elder Lorben of Veltrax 7. We face an unprecedented crisis, and humbly request immediate assistance. The holographic projection of the elderly Veltraxian trembled slightly as he spoke. His 4 elongated fingers pressed against his chest in the traditional gesture of distress, translucent skin revealing the rapid beating of his 3 hearts. Ambassador Krill of the Zentari Collective leaned forward, multifaceted eyes narrowing. What exactly is the nature of this crisis, High Elder? Mechanical parasites, Lorben replied, voice cracking. They arrived on what we thought was a derelict mining vessel. Now they're spreading, consuming our technology, adapting, and the transmission fizzled momentarily, and we cannot stop them. As you know, the Veltraxian people have maintained our pacifist philosophy for 12 generations. We are unprepared for this threat. Around the semicircular council chamber, representatives from 27 advanced civilizations exchanged uncomfortable glances. The Veltraxians were beloved across the galaxy, brilliant philosophers, artists, and scientists who had contributed immeasurably to galactic culture. They were also, as a species, about as threatening as a basket of seedlings. Ambassador Grell of the Tachyon dynasty cleared her throat, all 7 of them simultaneously. While the Council sympathizes with your predicament, High Elder, mechanical parasites present a Level 4 technological hazard. Under Galactic Protocol 773b, intervention requires specialized defense forces with particular, aggressive capabilities. Translation: nobody wanted to risk their own people. High Elder Lorben's hologram flickered sadly. I understand. Perhaps we shall simply evacuate and surrender our homeworld to these invaders. The council chamber fell into uncomfortable silence. Evacuation of an entire planetary population was not only logistically nightmarish, but would create a refugee crisis across the sector. Plus, nobody wanted mechanical parasites getting cozy on a resource-rich planet. Those things spread. It was Ambassador Tevuk of the Marixis Federation who finally spoke, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. What about those new members, the humans? A collective gasp rippled through the chamber. Ambassador Krill almost choked on her ceremonial nectar. The humans, are you mad? They're barely civilized. They only achieved faster than light travel 8 standard cycles ago. Precisely, Tevuk replied. They're resourceful, adaptable, and they possess a certain, what's their term for it? Creative problem solving under pressure. You mean chaotic recklessness, muttered Ambassador Grell. Yes, well, Tevuk continued. This situation may benefit from their particular approach. They're the only species I know that would consider mechanical parasites an interesting challenge rather than a reason to quarantine an entire star system. High Elder Lorben's hologram perked up. These humans, are they effective against technological threats? Tevuk's mandibles twitched in what passed for a smile among the Marixis. High Elder, the humans have spent most of their evolutionary history fighting their own technology. Sometimes I think they enjoy it. Ambassador Krill sighed heavily. I suppose if the alternative is abandoning Veltrax 7, the vote was quick and unanimous. Not because everyone thought it was a good idea, but because everyone was relieved it wouldn't be their species dealing with mechanical parasites. As the council adjourned, Ambassador Tevuk approached the Veltraxian hologram. High Elder, I should warn you, the humans may solve your problem, but their methods can be unconventional. We welcome any assistance, Ambassador, Lorben replied gratefully. Little did he know that unconventional was the understatement of the galactic cycle. Captain Jack Harlow leaned back in his chair, boots propped on the table, balancing precariously on 2 chair legs. The rundown spaceport bar on Luna Station wasn't exactly military standard, but that suited him fine. 4 years since his dishonorable discharge for excessive creativity in combat situations, and he was still struggling to find work that matched his particular skill set. All I'm saying, he announced to nobody in particular, is that if they didn't want me to use the atmospheric scrubbers as improvised flamethrowers, they shouldn't have made them so easily convertible. Across from him, Dr. Ellie Nakamura snorted into her drink. Please. At least you didn't lose research funding for ethically questionable experimentation. I simply suggested we could solve the Mars colony's protein shortage by genetically modifying the cockroaches. They're practically indestructible already. Both of you need to relax, said Dexter Dex Rodriguez, the engineer whose hands hadn't stopped moving once during the conversation. He was currently dismantling and reassembling the bar's automated drink dispenser, much to the owner's dismay. So what if they called my reactor design unnecessarily volatile? The explosion radius was completely within acceptable parameters. Mostly. Just then, The bar's entrance hissed open, revealing a tall, willowy figure that immediately silenced the room. 7 feet of blue-gray skin, wrapped in an iridescent diplomatic robe that seemed to catch light from angles that didn't exist. The alien's elongated head swiveled slowly, 6 dark eyes blinking in sequence. "I seek 3 humans," announced the figure in a melodious voice. "Captain Jack Harlow, Dr. Eleanor Nakamura, and Engineer Dexter Rodriguez." Jack's chair thumped back onto all 4 legs. "Depends who's asking. I am Ambassador Tuvok of the Galactic Council. We require your assistance with a delicate matter." 30 minutes later, the 3 humans sat in a private conference room, reviewing holographic footage of mechanical parasites swarming across Veltraxian infrastructure. "Fascinating adaptive properties," Ellie murmured, eyes wide with scientific interest rather than appropriate horror. "Look how they're incorporating local materials." "The Veltraxians are a level 7 civilization with remarkable technological advancement," Tuvok explained, "but they have evolved beyond aggressive impulses. They cannot conceptualize how to combat this threat. So you need someone who's good at breaking stuff," Jack summarized, cracking his knuckles. Tuvok's mandibles clicked uncomfortably. "The Council requires specialists with unconventional problem-solving abilities. Your files indicate you all possess exceptional talents, despite your somewhat troubled professional histories." "You mean we're the only ones crazy enough to take this job?" Dex said, already sketching design modifications on a napkin. "These parasites have a central control node, see. If we could overload it with a localized electromagnetic pulse, maybe rigged from their own power grid." Tuvok blinked rapidly. "The Council authorization provides for standard containment equipment, non-lethal suppression tools, and diplomatic." "Yeah, we're gonna need more than that," Jack interrupted. "Blowtorches, industrial acid, maybe some mining explosives." "Explosives?" Tuvok's voice rose an octave. "The Veltraxians are pacifists. Their civilization is built on principles of harmony and preservation." Ellie smiled sweetly. "Ambassador, do you want their civilization preserved, or do you want these parasites eliminated? Because I can guarantee these mechanical bugs don't care about principles of harmony." Tuvok slumped slightly. "The Council anticipated your unique perspective. You will have reasonable access to resources, but please remember this is a rescue mission, not a total annihilation party," Jack offered. "Precisely," Tuvok sighed. "Your transport leaves in 3 hours. You'll rendezvous with a Veltraxian diplomatic vessel at the edge of their system." As Tuvok departed, the 3 humans exchanged glances. "So," Jack said slowly, "we're being sent by the high and mighty Galactic Council to save an advanced alien civilization, because we're the only ones reckless enough to actually fight these things." "Pretty much," Ellie replied, already making a list of equipment modifications. Dex grinned. "Anyone else feeling ridiculously validated right now?" "Oh yeah," Jack said, cracking his neck. "I've been waiting my whole life for someone to say, 'Your methods are insane, but we need them anyway.'" Ellie raised her glass. "To being humanity's worst representatives. But exactly what the situation needs," Dex added. They clinked glasses, blissfully unaware of just how desperate the situation truly was, or how much Ambassador Tuvok was already regretting the Council's decision. The Veltraxian diplomatic vessel Harmonious Accord was a marvel of engineering, sleek curves of iridescent metal, gravity manipulation that made movement feel like floating through water, and an AI system so advanced it anticipated needs before they were expressed. It was beautiful, serene, and completely unprepared for its human passengers. "What do you mean, no coffee?" Jack demanded, staring at the ship's hospitality attendant. The Veltraxian named Plix, according to his luminescent name badge, blinked his large eyes in confusion. "I regret that we are unfamiliar with this coffee substance," Plix explained. "Our database indicates it contains a neurostimulant that humans voluntarily consume. We have nutritionally complete sustenance alternatives." Ellie appeared beside Jack, hair disheveled, clutching scientific equipment that definitely wasn't part of their approved gear. "Did someone say there's no coffee? That's a humanitarian crisis." "Fear not," Dex called from across the lounge where he'd already dismantled a food synthesizer. "Give me 20 minutes. I'll recalibrate the molecular assembly matrix to approximate caffeine. Might taste like engine lubricant, but it'll wake you up." Plix's translucent skin paled further. "Sir, the molecular assembly systems are calibrated for optimal sustenance and they'll be even better when I'm done," Dex assured him, elbow deep in circuitry. Meanwhile, Captain Nyleria, the Veltraxian ship commander, was giving Jack a tour of the bridge. Her elegant movements suggested she was trying very hard to be diplomatic despite mounting concerns. As you can see, Captain Harlow, our navigation systems operate on quantum predictive algorithms. That she stopped mid-sentence, as Jack poked at a holographic display, causing it to flicker and change configuration. Sorry, he said. Not sounding sorry at all. Just checking your defense capabilities. Defense? Nyleria tilted her head. The Harmonious Accord is a diplomatic vessel, right, but you must have some weapons. Shields. Point defense systems. We have advanced deflector fields to protect against cosmic radiation and micrometeoroids, she offered hesitantly. Jack stared at her. What about lasers? Plasma cannons? Heck, I'd settle for a good old-fashioned kinetic slug thrower. Captain Harlow, Nyleria said carefully. Veltraxian vessels do not carry weapons. It would contradict our core philosophical principles. Jack blinked slowly. You're telling me you travel through deep space with all its pirates, rogue AI, and whatever else is out there, completely unarmed. The Galactic Council provides safe transit corridors, and most species respect diplomatic vessels, she explained. Violence is exceedingly rare in civilized space. Huh, Jack said, scratching his chin. No wonder you folks need help with an invasion. On the ship's observation deck, Ambassador Zorin of the Veltraxian High Council was receiving a detailed and increasingly alarming briefing from Dr. Nakamura about her proposed solution. So these nanobots would essentially hunt down the mechanical parasites? Zorin asked, four-fingered hands trembling slightly. Exactly, Ellie beamed. I've been developing them as a hobby. They're programmed to identify and neutralize invasive technological signatures. Think of them as antibodies for your planetary system. And these nanobots of yours, Zorin continued carefully. They won't themselves become a secondary invasion. Ellie waved dismissively. Oh, I've built in a degradation protocol. After approximately 72 hours, they'll break down into inert components. 98% of them, at least. The remaining 2% might continue reproducing for a while, but they should stay focused on the parasites. Should. Zorin's voice cracked. Science isn't about certainties, Ambassador, Ellie said cheerfully. It's about acceptable risks. By the fourth day of their journey, the Veltraxian crew had developed a peculiar twitch whenever any of the humans approached. This wasn't helped by the mysterious explosion from the cargo bay. Siver just testing something, Dex had called out. Or by Jack's impromptu combat drills for the bewildered Veltraxian crew members, or by Ellie's casual request for tissue samples from every species on board. Captain Nyleria called an emergency meeting with Ambassador Zorin. With all due respect, she hissed quietly. These humans are dangerous. Engineer Rodriguez has modified 16 ship systems without authorization. Captain Harlow is stockpiling makeshift weapons. And Dr. Nakamura, she shuddered, requested access to our biological database to, and I quote, see what useful adaptations we could borrow. Ambassador Zorin sighed deeply. The Council assured us these humans are specialists in crisis resolution. They're going to resolve us right into oblivion. Nyleria muttered. Their conversation was interrupted by the ship's announcement system. Approaching Veltrax 7 orbital boundary, the AI's soothing voice informed them. Warning. Unusual technological signatures detected. Mass concentrations on southern continent show characteristics inconsistent with registered Veltraxian technology. The humans and Veltraxians gathered at the forward observation window as the ship decelerated into orbit. Below them, the once pristine blue-green surface of Veltrax 7 was marred by a spreading metallic stain across one continent. Even from orbit, they could see the glinting movement of thousands, perhaps millions of mechanical forms swarming across the landscape. Well, Jack said, cracking his knuckles with inappropriate enthusiasm. That doesn't look good. Fascinating adaptive pattern recognition, Ellie whispered, pressing her face against the glass. Dex whistled low. They've already hijacked 3 atmospheric processors. Look at those energy signatures. The Veltraxians looked at each other in horror, not just at the sight of their infected homeworld, but at the eager expressions on the humans' faces. May the cosmic harmony preserve us, murmured Ambassador Zorin. Jack slapped him on the back, nearly knocking the frail diplomat over. Don't worry, Ambassador, we're going to need some mining equipment, unlimited access to your power grid, and possibly a really big magnet. But first, he grinned, a troubling gleam in his eye. We need to get down there and see what we're dealing with. The Veltraxian emergency bunker was a marvel of organic architecture, walls that seemed to breathe, lighting that adjusted to emotional states, and intelligent surfaces that reconfigured to optimize comfort. It was the most advanced panic room in the galaxy, currently serving as command central for what Jack had already dubbed Operation Parasite Smash. High Elder Lorben, looking significantly more distressed in person than he had via hologram, gestured to the 3D map hovering in the center of the room. The mechanical invaders began here, at the crash site of an unidentified vessel. Within 3 days, they had consumed our primary communications array. By day 7, they had assimilated our southern power distribution hub. And nobody thought to, I don't know, smash them, Jack asked, examining the spread pattern. The assembled Veltraxian scientists and officials exchanged horrified glances. Captain Harlow, said Chief Scientist Mila, her voice gentle as if explaining to a child. Veltraxians have evolved beyond destructive impulses. When the parasites appeared, our first response was to establish communication. How'd that work out? Dex muttered, earning an elbow from Ellie. The parasites do not communicate, Mila continued. They simply consume and replicate. We attempted containment fields, but they adapted to the frequency. We tried isolation protocols, but they developed burrowing capabilities. Ellie circled the holographic display, eyes narrowed. Have you tried electromagnetic pulse weapons, ion disruptors? Another uncomfortable silence filled the room. We do not possess such technologies, admitted High Elder Lorben. Our civilization has focused on creation rather than destruction for the past 12 generations. Jack pinched the bridge of his nose. Let me get this straight. You have faster than light travel, nearly sentient AI, and buildings that basically read your mind, but you don't have a single weapon on the entire planet. We have industrial tools, offered one hopeful administrator. Cutting lasers for architectural purposes, fusion cores for energy production. Now we're talking, Dex interrupted, eyes lighting up. Fusion cores have serious potential. Jack turned to the Veltraxians. We need to see these parasites up close. Got any safe observation posts near the affected zone? 20 minutes later, the 3 humans stood at the edge of a once beautiful botanical garden, now transformed into what could only be described as a technological nightmare. Through high-powered binoculars, they watched thousands of spider-like mechanical creatures skittering across what had once been an ornamental lake, now filled with a churning metallic sludge. Fascinating, Ellie whispered. They're breaking down matter at the molecular level, and reconstituting it. Look how they're incorporating the indigenous technology. Yeah, fascinating, Jack said dryly. They're also building something big in the center, some kind of hub structure. Dex adjusted his scanner. That's gotta be the control node. Classic swarm architecture, distributed intelligence with a central coordination point. If we can disrupt that, the whole swarm falls apart, Jack finished. Behind them, Ambassador Zorin wrung his hands anxiously. You truly believe you can stop this invasion? Our brightest minds have failed. No offense, Ambassador, Jack replied. But your brightest minds probably never considered solving a problem by blowing it up. Blowing it up. Zorin's eyes widened in alarm. But the environmental damage will be significantly less than losing your entire planet. Ellie pointed out reasonably. Back at the bunker, the humans laid out their plan to the horrified Veltraxian leadership. It's a 3-pronged approach, Jack explained, pacing in front of a hastily assembled diagram. First, Dex reconfigures your cutting lasers into high-powered energy weapons. Energy weapons, echoed a Veltraxian elder, the bioluminescent patterns on his skin flashing in distress. Then Ellie releases her modified nanobots to target and disrupt the parasite's communication network. Modified nanobots, another elder's voice rose an octave. And finally, we use your fusion cores to create what I like to call a controlled catastrophic energy releases targeting the central hub. A what? High Elder Lorben looked faint. An explosion, Dex clarified helpfully. A really big one. The room erupted in protests, with Veltraxian officials talking over each other in increasingly high-pitched tones. This plan violates 17 core principles of Veltraxian philosophy. The ecological impact would be devastating. We cannot sanction deliberate destruction, even to save ourselves. Jack waited for the commotion to die down before speaking again. Look, I understand this goes against everything you believe in. But those parasites out there, they don't care about your principles. They're consuming your world, and they're not going to stop for a philosophical debate. Ellie stepped forward. We've analyzed your historical archives. 12 generations ago, before your society embraced absolute pacifism, your ancestors dealt with threats. They understood that sometimes preservation requires action. What she's saying, Dex added, is that you called for help, and this is what help looks like. It's messy, it's ugly, but it's effective. High Elder Lorben looked at his fellow council members, then back at the humans. You truly believe this is the only way? If there was a nice, neat, non-explosive solution, Jack said gently, your people would have found it already. A long silence filled the room. Finally, High Elder Lorben nodded slowly. We cannot participate in these actions, he said firmly. But, we will not prevent you from proceeding. Whatever materials you require will be provided. As the Veltraxian leadership filed out, looking like they'd just signed a deal with cosmic devils, Dex turned to his colleagues with a grin. Anyone else feel like we just got official permission to break all the rules? Pretty much, Jack agreed. Already mentally cataloging the industrial tools he planned to repurpose, Ellie was busy typing on her tablet. I'll need access to their biosynthesis labs. My nanobots could use some Veltraxian DNA markers to improve their targeting algorithms. Ambassador Zorin, who had remained behind, looked at them with a mixture of hope and horror. The council warned us your methods would be unconventional. I did not realize unconventional was a euphemism for terrifying. Jack clapped him on the shoulder. Ambassador, there's something you should understand about humans. What you call terrifying, we call Tuesday. Now let's go save your planet. Dawn broke over Veltrax 7 with eerie silence. The normally bustling central plaza of the capital city stood empty, evacuated hours earlier under Jack's insistence. The only movement came from the advancing line of mechanical parasites, their metal limbs clicking rhythmically against the crystal walkways. Comms check, Jack's voice crackled through the makeshift headsets. He was positioned on the roof of the Cultural Archives building, surrounded by what had once been precision architectural cutting lasers, now modified by Dex into something that would make military weapons engineers either impressed or horrified. Probably both. Ellie here. Nanobot deployment ready at position 2, came the scientist's cheerful reply. She sounded like she was about to start a fun experiment rather than engage in technological warfare. Dex, at position 3 with the package, the engineer responded. Though I still think we should call it what it is, a fusion bomb with really creative wiring. The Veltraxians are still monitoring this channel, Jack reminded him. Let's try not to traumatize them more than necessary. In the emergency bunker, Ambassador Zorin and the Veltraxian leadership watched the tactical display with expressions ranging from horror to morbid fascination. None of them had witnessed conflict in their lifetimes, not even simulated ones. Targets approaching optimal range, Jack announced. Ellie, you're up first. Releasing the nanobots now, she replied. Below her position at a medical center, thousands of microscopic robots poured from a modified atmospheric vent, forming a silvery cloud that drifted toward the approaching parasite swarm. The effect was immediate and visible even from a distance. The front line of parasites began to twitch and stutter, their movements becoming erratic. Several spasmed and collapsed entirely, tiny legs curling inward. Initial disruption successful, Ellie reported excitedly. The nanobots are targeting their communication nodes exactly as designed. I'm seeing approximately 72% effectiveness, which is honestly better than I expected given the rush job. Did she just say she expected a 28% failure rate? A Veltraxian official whispered in the bunker. Dex, how's our path to the central hub looking? Jack asked, ignoring the commentary. Not great, Dex replied, his voice tighter than before. The swarm is adapting already. Wait, this doesn't make sense. They're sacrificing the outer layer to form some kind of protective shell around the hub. Jack adjusted his position, aiming the repurposed cutting laser at the advancing horde. Time for phase 2, firing in 3, 2. The beam that erupted from Jack's position wasn't the precision tool the Veltraxians had designed. It was a superheated plasma stream that carved through the first wave of parasites like they were made of paper. The affected creatures didn't just stop, they melted, components liquefying into metallic puddles. In the bunker, several Veltraxian elders turned away from the screen, luminescent patterns flickering in distress. Path cleared temporarily, Jack reported. But we've got a new problem. The main swarm is changing direction, they're heading toward the power distribution center. They're learning, Ellie said, her scientific excitement momentarily overwhelming her concern. They've identified the energy source of our weapons and are moving to neutralize it. Not on my watch, Jack growled. Dex, we need to move up the timetable. How close can you get that package to the hub? If I cut through the underground transit tunnels I can get within 200 meters, Dex replied. But the detonation range will take out 3 city blocks of pristine Veltraxian architecture. Better than losing the whole planet, Jack decided. I'll create a diversion to draw the main swarm away from your path. Ellie, can you redirect your nanobots to provide cover? Already on it, she confirmed. I've adjusted their programming to form a kind of interference barrier. It won't last long, but it should buy Dex some time. Jack repositioned his weapon and fired again, this time aiming not at the parasites but at an ornate fountain in the plaza center. It exploded in a spectacular display of crystal and water, instantly attracting the attention of the nearest parasite cluster. Seems they can't resist new materials to consume, Jack observed as the swarm diverted toward the destruction. Heading to backup position. Dex, you're clear for approach. The next 10 minutes were a symphony of controlled chaos. Jack continued creating strategic destruction, leading the bulk of the swarm on a wild chase through the city center. Ellie's nanobots formed shifting barriers that temporarily confused the parasite's sensors, and Dex navigated the underground tunnels, dragging what was essentially a repurposed fusion core with extremely unauthorized modifications. Almost in position, Dex reported, breathing heavily. But we've got company down here. Some smaller units have broken off from the main swarm. How many? Jack asked, recharging his weapon. About 50. No wait, 100 plus and growing. They're coming through the maintenance shafts, Jack cursed. Can you handle them? Not without dropping the package, which seems counterproductive. Ellie's voice cut in. I'm closest, coming to assist. Negative, Jack ordered. We need your nanobots maintaining the diversion. Already handled, Ellie replied. I've set them to autonomous mode. Besides, I brought toys. Those toys turned out to be pressurized canisters of what she cheerfully described as supercooled molecular destabilizer, but was essentially industrial-grade acid, repurposed from Veltraxian material fabrication labs. As she rendezvoused with Dex in the tunnels, she unleashed a spray that turned advancing parasites into sizzling puddles of inert components. See, she said brightly, as Dex stared at the dissolving metal. Science is fun. You're terrifying, Dex informed her, adjusting the final settings on his device. Also, we're in position. Timer set. 3 minutes and counting. More than enough time to reach minimum safe distance. They just turned to leave when a massive tremor shook the tunnel, collapsing the passage they'd entered through. Slight problem, Dex reported to Jack. Exit route compromised. Alternative paths. Working on it, Dex replied, studying the tunnel system on his tablet. There's a maintenance shaft that could work, but his words were cut off as the walls around them began to bulge inward, metal parasites visibly burrowing through the composite material. They're coming through the walls, Ellie shouted, unnecessary but understandably. New plan, Jack decided. I'm coming to you. Hold position. Hold position. Dex echoed incredulously. Next to an about-to-explode fusion device with parasites coming through the walls. But Jack had already cut communication, racing toward their position with what the Veltraxians would later describe as alarming disregard for personal safety. Using his repurposed laser as both weapon and cutting tool, he carved a new path through the city infrastructure, leaving a trail of destruction that made the watching Veltraxians wince collectively. With 15 seconds to spare, Jack burst through the ceiling of the tunnel where Ellie and Dex were making their last stand against encroaching parasites. Going up, he quipped, firing his weapon to widen the opening. He'd rigged a grappling system from what had once been artistic suspension cables, now serving a decidedly less aesthetic purpose. The 3 humans ascended rapidly, Ellie pausing only to drop her remaining acid canisters on the parasites below. They cleared the surface just as Dex's timer hit 0. The explosion wasn't just big, it was precisely calibrated, focusing its energy downward and inward, directly into the heart of the parasite hub. The ground shuddered, and a contained shockwave rippled outward, stopping just short of the city's main structures. Across the city, the effect was immediate. The mechanical parasites froze mid-motion, their coordinated intelligence suddenly severed. Some collapsed instantly. Others continued random movements for several moments before shutting down. From their vantage point on a nearby rooftop, the 3 humans watched as their handiwork unfolded. Would you look at that? Jack said with satisfaction. Textbook swarm collapse. The nanobots will clean up any stragglers, Ellie added, brushing debris from her hair with surprising nonchalance. Dex was already examining his scanner. Parasite activity dropping to near 0 across all sectors. I'd call that a successful extermination. In the command bunker, the Veltraxian leadership stared at their monitors in stunned silence. Their beautiful capital city was partially melted, riddled with holes, and missing several notable landmarks. But the parasite invasion that had threatened their entire civilization had been stopped in less than an hour. They actually did it, Ambassador Zoran whispered. Through means that violate virtually every principle we hold sacred, but they did it. High Elder Lorben nodded slowly. Perhaps there is wisdom in retaining some defensive capabilities, after all. As Jack, Ellie and Dex made their way back toward the bunker, they passed through sections of the city now littered with inactive parasite husks. You know, Jack mused, kicking one of the defunct creatures. In a way, I almost feel bad for them. They picked the wrong planet to invade. How so? Ellie asked, already collecting samples for later study. Jack grinned. They found the one species in the galaxy without weapons, but with friends crazy enough to use them. The farewell ceremony in the partially reconstructed Grand Hall of Veltrax 7 was an awkward affair. The Veltraxians had hastily created a new Medal of Honor, having never needed one before. The design, a symbol of protection overlaid on their traditional peace emblem, seemed to perfectly capture their conflicted feelings. For services rendered to our world, High Elder Lorben announced, voice still slightly shaky, we present the humans with the order of necessary action. Jack accepted his medal with an uncharacteristically formal nod, happy to help. If you ever have another apocalyptic crisis, you know who to call. Several Veltraxian officials visibly paled at the thought. We've implemented some of your defensive suggestions, Ambassador Zoran mentioned quietly, though we've modified the designs considerably. Let me guess, Dex said, less total annihilation and more gentle discouragement. Precisely. As they boarded the diplomatic vessel for their return journey, Ellie was still scrolling through data on her tablet. The parasite samples I collected show remarkable adaptive properties. With some modifications, they could revolutionize medical nanotechnology. I've already drafted 6 research proposals. Just promise me they won't eat a planet, Jack replied. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, Ambassador Tovok was delivering the mission report to the assembled representatives. The Veltraxian crisis has been resolved, he stated formally. The mechanical parasite threat has been neutralized with minimal planetary damage. Define minimal, Ambassador Krill demanded. Tovok's mandibles clicked nervously. 3 square kilometers of urban infrastructure requiring reconstruction, 1 fusion core expended, and several historical monuments, repurposed. A low murmur rippled through the chamber. But Tovok continued quickly. The Veltraxian homeworld is secure, their population is safe, and the parasites have been completely eradicated. The council voted unanimously to classify the human intervention methods as restricted information, while simultaneously establishing a specialized human response team for future technological crises. As Jack had put it before departing, the galaxy just discovered its new exterminators. We're messy, we're loud, and we charge premium rates, but we get the job done. And somewhere in the vast bureaucracy of Galactic Council records, a new file appeared, labeled, Humans Handle with Care. Deploy only in case of emergency. It would be needed again sooner than anyone expected.